We have gone live on FB. You can check Vikas.
Yeah, it's on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah, good evening, Father.
Good evening, Manoj. Morning.
Good evening, Father.
Good evening, Vikas. Yes.
Dharmesh ji is joining, I believe.
Good evening, Father.
Good evening, Rakesh. How are you? After a long time.
Good, Father. How are you?
Yes. We met many. I met many times Anupam, but not you.
Good evening, Father.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, Dharmesh ji has joined.
Good evening.
Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Father.
Good evening.
This is Ashok from Bangalore.
Yeah. Nice meeting you. Yes. Nice. Thanks for joining.
Father.
Yeah,
Good evening, Father.
Good evening, Dharman. Yes. But
Good evening, Dr. Patel.
Dharman, you're not using your mobile or your laptop.
No, actually, my battery is off, so I'm using
I know. I can read it here. It's okay.
Father, Dr. Patel is a Xaverian.
Oh, very good.
Hi, Dharmesh.
Hello. How are you?
I'm
Hi,
good.
there
How
you
are
are.
Rakesh, lovely to see you, Rakesh.
Great to see you.
Father Xavier is there as well.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Good evening.
Good evening, Father.
So,
Good evening.
Good evening.
Sir. Good evening.
Shall I just try and share my screen for a second and see if it's all okay?
Sure. Please.
Yeah, please.
Okay, I'll just check that.
only.
Dharmesh, have you tried?
Hi, Vikas. How are you?
I am fine. Dharmesh, just try your screen once. Share your screen and see. Dharmesh, your frame has frozen.
Hello.
Dharmesh, can you share your screen?
Yeah, I was doing that for somehow my link, the Wi-Fi went off. Are you able now?
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
Yes.
That's good.
I'll stop sharing right now. Or...
Please unmute yourself, those whom I am allowing to unmute, because there is a lot of disturbance otherwise. So, Father Dharmesh, Dr. Dharmesh sir, Vikas, Rakesh Shah,
the connection is a little bit weak. It is possible that I may be sort of disconnected for just a few seconds. I'll get back if that's the issue. The last couple of days, for some reason, the Wi-Fi has been playing up, but I guess it shouldn't be a problem. So, yeah.
Father, you can unmute yourself, please. So because it is 7 o'clock, can you just start the proceedings to ask Father to?
Father, with your permission, can we start the proceedings? 7 o'clock, and we have a history of starting on time.
Father, please unmute yourself.
Kindly go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you, Father. So, friends, welcome to the 15th edition of Knowledge and Ideas Exchange series. I request our dear President of St. Xavier's College, Calcutta Alumni Association, and President and Principal of St. Xavier's College to kindly give his welcome address. Father, please.
Thank you, Vikas. Very good evening to all of you. Dr. Dharmesh Patel, the Xaverian, Mr. Sanjeev Konar, the Honorary Secretary of Calcutta, St. Xavier's College, Calcutta Alumni Association, Reverend Fathers, all our friends, alumni friends in Kolkata, Bangalore, and participating from other chapters all over India, even world. Welcome to the 15th edition of Knowledge and Ideas Exchange series. A special welcome to Dr. Dharmesh Patel, Xaverian, all the way from Gujarat, for taking some time out of his busy schedule. We are very, very grateful to you, Dr. Patel, for this kind gesture. With a massive second wave of COVID pandemic sweeping through India, 1 out of 5 infection in the world currently is being reported from our country. This second wave of COVID is spreading much faster than the first and is very much devastating in nature. Many experts believe that the current surge is partly fueled by new strains of the coronavirus, which is genetically modified, more infectious as a result of the homegrown variant found in the majority of samples genome sequenced in the worst hit states of the country. The laxity in the preventive measures and wrong anticipations, in addition to the presence of new variants, has resulted in this national calamity. Many states are reporting shortage of hospital beds, oxygen supply, COVID testing kits, medicines, even space in morgues and crematoriums. A few questions are coming to our minds. I'm sure these questions are for all the participants of this webinar, such as, are more young people getting infected and hospitalized in this out of control second wave pandemic? Are children more vulnerable this time? Is the virus more infectious and the disease more severe? Why are the transmission rates higher in the second wave? Are RT-PCR tests less effective in current scenario? I would like to put forward these questions to Dr. Patel. These are the questions anybody could ask, and look for some kind of easy solution from him. Surely cannot be any solution, but some of the tips that we can follow to guard ourselves. I'm sure with the huge experience of giving life to thousands of COVID victims, Dr. Patel is the best person to guide us. In this context, I would like to mention that the members of the Alumni Association, with our secretary, Mr. Sanjeev Konar, and other members, are literally working as COVID lifeline entitled St. Xavier's College Calcutta Alumni Association Help, and provide essential services and facilities to help the COVID comorbidity patients. Very soon, we are going to procure oxygen concentrators, oxygen cylinders, pulse oximeters, PPE kits, hand sanitizers, KN95 and surgical masks, and other essential commodities to distribute them to those who need them but unable to procure. We cannot remain idle at this difficult situation and will have to engage ourselves in extending these services. As the main principle of our Jesuit education is to act as men and women for others, and this is the time to prove it. We are also seriously thinking of giving 1 or 2 floors of our rural campus, St. Xavier's College, Calcutta, rural campus, Ragapur campus, for the isolation ward. And Mr. Sanjeev Konar, Mr. Razan, all the other people are working with the hospitals. Soon, maybe by end of next week, we should be able to convert 1 or 2 floors of our campus in the rural area. First to the parents of our students, other people, surely we can start with that one. I invite all of us, whatever is possible way we can contribute to combat this pandemic. We'll be very grateful. St. Xavier's College Alumni Association always stood by the people, stood by the poor people. I'm sure this time also you'll be generously coming forward to contribute in whatever way it is possible. With these words, I formally invite Dr. Dharmesh Patel to take the session forward, which is going to be very, very informative. Thank you very much, Doctor. May God bless you and God bless us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father. I'll just do a brief introduction of Dr. Patel. Dr. Dharmesh Patel, MD, Internal Medicine, DIP, National Board Respiratory Medicine, practicing respiratory consultant at Vadodara, Gujarat, and visiting consultant at Regmore Hospital, Inverness in UK. Worked in the intensive care units of PT Hinduja National Hospital, Mumbai, and Breach Candy Hospital in UK as Overseas Fellow of the Royal College of Physicians on London, trained in respiratory medicines in Cardiff, Southampton, and Portsmouth from 1996 to 1999, left the UK in 1999 as consultant in respiratory medicine. Specialized training, thoracoscopy training in Portsmouth, sleep medicine in Papworth and Southampton, special interest pleural diseases, scientific publications 12, and authored 3 book chapters. Part of the working group on Indian guidelines on allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis, COPD, asthma, basic bronchoscopy, and consensus statements in IPF and biopsy. Founder of the 10-year-old Society of Respiratory Medicine, Baroda Chest Group, an active group of 63 consultants in chest physicians, pathologists, microbiologists, radiologists, and surgeons, all interested in respiratory medicine. Lectured extensive in medical colleges, national meetings, and regional CMEs, and conducted workshops on pleural diseases. I think we can't get a more worthwhile speaker for this evening. Dr. Patel, please.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen before I start off, just to see everything is going okay. Somehow I seem to have lost the Okay. Are you able to see my screen at all? Vikas or anybody?
It has come, doctor. It has come.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Father Xavier, and Vikas for that kind introduction, and my greetings to all my alumni colleagues, my contemporaries. I see a few of them, my seniors, juniors. This really is one of the most nervous, I think, talks I've given, because this is very similar to the Critics Award, in films, where the popular award might be something else, but the Critics Award is something which you relish, and your school buddies are the ones who are your biggest critics. They are the ones who can actually tell you on your face that you're talking nonsense or you're doing good. So I much relish this invitation, and thank you for Vikas specifically to facilitate this. I don't claim myself an expert in COVID-19. Probably nobody can claim. It's a one-year-old disease. We've still not managed to get on top of it. And every time we think we are just nearly there, the virus outsmarts us. So what I've chosen in this 20 or 25 minutes, or maybe 30, is just pick up a few myths and facts. I know that though I'm not speaking to a majority audience, which is not a background in medicine, this is a very, very well-informed crowd. And they have to be, because they are from Xavier's. So what I've done is I've just taken 5 or 6 important factors in COVID, which may be relevant to you all, and then show the myths and the facts. And then after that,
Father, doctor, we are unable to hear you actually. Yeah. Your voice is breaking, doctor. You can't hear you.
hello?
Yeah, it is better now. Yeah.
Can you hear me at all?
Yes, yes. Now we can hear you.
And you can see the screen as well?
Not now. It was earlier visible. Now you have to reshare the thing. Now we can see you actually.
I'm sorry about this, but I don't know why this is happening. I'm seeing my connections are okay, but yeah, I'll start sharing screen again. I think the sharing screen is causing a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it is showing.
So,
yeah.
I don't know whether you could see this. The first myth, on a lighter note, is getting into St. Xavier's is impossible. And I can vouch for that. Having made 3 attempts to get into the junior section, at least at that particular time, which is what must be in 1971 or 72, was almost impossible. My mother's early morning tutorials, strict instructions not to get out of the bed till you complete the 12 multiplication tables, and then subsequently a nervous interview with the white cassock-clad father, who slumped me on a number of occasions by asking me not what is 2 into 3, but how many times does or well, not what is 3 into 4, which was 12, but how many times does 3 make 12? So you just twisted answers, questions were asked, making things very difficult. But then the choice of receiving the acceptance into St. Xavier's and a long-lasting friendship really with the best of the best made things excellent. And therefore, I think getting into St. Xavier's, of course, was impossible at that time. Whether that's a fact or not is for Father Xavier to confirm. And my friends here, I know many of the children have been into St. Xavier's. So is it still difficult to get in or not is something which I'd love to know. Anyway, that's the sort of, slight on a lighter note. Let's talk about some important topics. And I begin with vaccine. And I try to talk about the vaccine because that is what it looks at the moment is our main savior. The COVID-19 vaccine, there are 14 different vaccines authorized and approved across 3 platforms. Some manufacturers are using the inactivated virus. Some are using the particles of the virus, the genetic particles, and some are using recombinant viruses. There are 7 at the moment available in the world. 200 additional ones are in the development, emphasizing the fact how important the world has realized that our salvation, from this virus lies in vaccines. As of today morning, 1.23 billion doses, which is 8.1 billion of population. Remember, these are doses, not people. 1.23 billion doses across 174 countries have been administered. This is almost at the rate of 19.4 million doses per day. The inequity is, however, stark, with the high-income countries vaccinating their people 25 times faster than these sort of less wealthy countries. As you probably know, initially, a large number of the developed world sort of, gave their orders in advance and cornered a large chunk of the vaccines and have administered them very significantly. Maybe the recent yesterday's conversations and talk about reducing the patency or going away with the patency might open up the door for a large number of other less developed countries to then begin using and administering vaccines in a much more advanced manner and rapid manner. The vaccines do work, and we that have information from Israel and UK. Israel was the country that led the world in vaccination, and by February of this year, more than 84% of the people of more than 70 years age and older age received this vaccine, all the 2 doses. What has now resulted, therefore, is as the severe COVID cases and deaths have rapidly reduced in this country, with also supporting evidence coming from the United Kingdom. So it clearly works, and it is safe, as we shall see in the next couple of slides. And really, this is our only hope. And hence, I've begun this talk by emphasizing on COVID-19 vaccine, which I think is important. How has India fared? On the left of your screen is the Our World in Data, which is from the University of Oxford, an excellent data set if you are interested in knowing all about epidemiology. And again, as of today morning, if you see, these are the slides, and this is the, if you look at the lowest bar over here, this is India, where we began vaccination somewhere after the 14th of January. And we've reached around 8 or 9% only over the span of 3 months. We do not compare with Israel or United Kingdom, who had a head start about almost, just a month ahead. But other countries such as Turkey, Brazil, and even Serbia, they've almost started their vaccination program at the same time as India was, or India started. And you see they are, have done much better, almost 30% in Serbia. I take into board that the country demographics, the population, etc., make things easier for some countries to administer vaccine compared to us. If you look below on your left side, people in India who have fully vaccinated, that is both the doses, is only 2.29%. Whereas the share of the people only partly vaccinated as of today, and these are very up-to-date figures, is only 7.21%. Now, we know that for herd immunity to acquire, we need at least 60 to 70% of our population to be vaccinated. So we are still far off it. And at the rate at which we are going, we need 600 more days, which is almost close to 2 years, to get some resemblance of herd immunity and thereby protect ourselves from this virus. On the right side of your screen is the Ministry of Health and Welfare, Family Welfare data. And you can just see that there are two things which I'm trying to put forward to you is Gujarat and West Bengal. Compared to at least other states, these two countries where I belong from Gujarat, and I can proudly say also from West Bengal, having spent a good part of my life there and always like coming back there, we've done not bad by doing about 1.3 million population have been vaccinated. Again, it's not all the doses, it is a total number of doses that we have given, and West Bengal has 1.15 billion. Definitely better than all other states like Delhi, Chandigarh, Arunachal, etc. What's the myth of COVID-19 vaccines and why has it not been picked up so well, which it should have? Well, logistics is a problem, and it's a shame that we have been told as the country which is the largest manufacturer of vaccines and probably the pharmacy of the world have fallen short. It was only today when I saw a few patients, elderly people who said, we've taken the first vaccine on the 1st of April, and we are almost time, but we've been to 5 different places where vaccine is given, and they said they are closed because vaccine isn't available. So the logistics are there that it isn't available for a number of reasons which we shall not go into. But quite a large number of people have rung me up and asked, is it safe? And a large number of people have not taken up vaccines, even among the educated and the privileged class, because of the fear that vaccines are not safe. The fact is that all the vaccines available under emergency use authorization are quite safe. The COVID-19 vaccine and safety, like all vaccines, like whether it be measles, the BCG for tuberculosis, or for that matter, tetanus or any other diseases, vaccines are really reactogenic. In other words, they are supposed to cause some sort of reaction. These are minor reactions such as side pains, headache, fatigue, fever, etc. And these really reflect the brisk immunogenic responses which your body is setting up when you take the vaccine. The severe allergic reactions, which is what we call as anaphylaxis, is only in 2 to 5 per million, and these are really not fatal. Though there have been newspaper reports of fatal cases after vaccine, when they have been investigated, they had nothing to do with the vaccine, and therefore I can sort of vouch for this that it's 100% safe, really, the vaccine. It reduces transmission and it reduces disease severity. It protects you and protects others, and hence COVID-19 vaccine is effective in all sort of. Now, when we go into the types of available in India, you all are aware there are presently 2. The Covishield, which is the AstraZeneca product manufactured by the Serum Institute in Pune, and the Covaxin, which is a Bharat Biotech. Both these use inactivated viruses. The Covishield efficiency is 70% in reducing the risk of disease. Remember, vaccines do not prevent the disease. The vaccines do not prevent infection, they prevent the disease. In other words, you will get the virus, but the chances of it snowballing into a disease will be less, and especially 100%, the severity of the disease is truncated. The mild to moderate side pains, which Covishield is about 67%, fatigue, headache, fever, and muscle aches are very minor sort of irritants. A rare complication of Covishield has been shown to have blood clots with low platelets. These are the blood cells in your cells in the blood, which helps you to clot the blood when it bleeds. Or stop the blood bleeding, which happens. And this is a very, very rare side effect of Covishield. The Covaxin has not been shown to cause that, and in fact has an 81% efficacy as compared to the Covishield. We are aware of the fact that Pfizer, Moderna, and Sputnik 5 are the 3 different other vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer in USA, the Sputnik in Russia and some countries. They use the messenger RNA, which is the sort of genetic product of the virus, to try and manufacture vaccines, and their efficacies range to almost more than 90%, and in some cases 95%. The Sputnik V, as you know, has been authorized to be used in India with Dr. Reddy's pharmaceutical company, and hopefully we shall be seeing the Sputnik also coming in to the armamentarium in India. The most important concern or myth or fact could be vaccine causes disease. Now, this I know where it lands above, because a large number of people, I wouldn't say large, but significant amount of people I've seen, and many of my colleagues across the country have seen that after the first vaccine, they somehow developed symptoms of COVID. They go on to do their COVID test and that comes positive. Some people after 2 vaccines doses have come down with symptoms. And therefore it makes you think in your mind, is vaccine contributing to the disease? But then there are explanations to that. We all know no vaccines are 100% effective. The ones which you get in India are almost 70 to 80%, as we saw from the previous slide. So you do have a 20 to 30% chance of catching the disease when the vaccine is not effective. The vaccine begins to generate protective immunity 10 to 14 days after the second shot. So you're actually vulnerable from the time you take your first dose to about fortnight after you take your second shot. And so theoretically speaking, during this entire 4 or 6 weeks, you are vulnerable to catching the infection because the vaccine will not be entirely protective to the efficacy it has been shown in studies, which is there. So you can get the virus and still get the disease. There are asymptomatic disease. In other words, a patient, for example, or an individual may be harboring the virus. He may be asymptomatic. He takes the vaccine. After 5 or 6 days, we know which is the incubation period of the virus. You start getting symptoms, and therefore then you attribute it to probably that the vaccine which you took, which was just a bystander and a coincidence, that a patient or a person got COVID, which is not the case. And this is important, which Father Xavier pointed out, which we shall speak to it a little bit later, is breakthrough infection with variants. We are seeing variants of the virus, and it is possible that though we are told repeatedly that the vaccines will cover up the different variants of the virus, and when I say variant, which I shall try and explain later on, is that the virus changes its genetic profile and therefore it tries to outsmart vaccines and individuals. And this is a protective phenomena which every individual living being will try and do, that when you're threatened, you change yourself because you want to propagate. So the vaccine tries to change its spike proteins, which are proteins on its envelope, and thereby try and escape the immune system, which is called as immune escape. And it is possible that these variants which we are seeing, the UK variant, the Brazil and the South African variant, and of course the double mutant Indian variant, who are still not being covered up by the vaccine, though we are told that these are being covered up. So as I told you, remember, the vaccine protects against disease. It does not protect infection. So you will get the virus, but it will prevent you from either hospitalization because it will be not severe, and almost certainly it will prevent you from the most severe forms and deaths, which is there. So that's all about vaccine. And I hope I've given you the myth and the facts about it. Let's go on to the second myth. And this is an important thing to understand. And this myth is really that the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is the SARS-CoV-2 virus, as we say, is not spread by airborne. To try to explain a little bit about all this, let me show you this cartoon on your left as to how viruses spread and how COVID spreads. It spreads by every virus infection, by and large respiratory, goes through respiratory droplet transmission, a fomite contact, and airborne. These are the 3 ways by which viruses get transmitted from humans to each other. So droplet transmission is that when a person who is infected, it spreads through the exposure to virus containing respiratory droplets. So when a person coughs, sneezes, these virus droplet particles sort of fall down by gravity. If you are at a very close contact with this individual, you inhale this virus and thereby get to cause the disease. Normal distances is what has been touted as approximately 2 feet is what is you have to be in close contact to catch the virus. Then there is the fomite contact, which is an infection which is spread through really direct contact with an infectious sort of person. For example, by touching him during a handshake, or when an article which the person touches or his particles fall into the surface of a table or a counter and it's contaminated, you happen to touch it, and then you put your sort of inadvertently you clean your nose or you move your hands over the face and nose, then there is a possibility that the virus is acquired by you. This is fomite transmission. Finally, the airborne transmission is that the virus remains in the air for a longer time and travels for a longer distance, usually more than 6 feet and typically over long hours. So this is the 3 ways. Now, all this while, what was found to be is that the virus, which is SARS-CoV-2, is not an airborne disease. It is only through respiratory droplet transmission and fomic contact. And this was believed by the world community for a long time. Now, why this is important to know is transmission is because it is critical to develop effective public health and effective preventive measures to break the chain of transmission. Now, if it's a respiratory droplet transmission or fomite contact, then we know that cleaning surfaces, as a large number of hospitals and homes are doing, by the alcohol-based sort of disinfectants or physical barriers, as we have said that we better be at a distance of almost 2 meters from somebody who's infected, and physical barriers like masks, use of mask within the droplet distance, and respiratory hygiene is for the droplets. But if you have an airborne disease, then the whole thing changes to having good ventilation, good air filtration, reducing crowding and the time spent indoors, because airborne viruses, or the chances of getting infection through airborne, is more indoors than outdoors. Use of sort of, masks whenever indoors, attention, or whenever indoors, or attention to mask quality and fit, and a higher grade protection for health workers like me and others as frontline workers, where we need to go into very high grade if it's an aerosol generating procedure. So that's what the difference is. Now, if you look at what the WHO has said in July 2020, it said that primarily the SARS-CoV-2 is spread between people through direct, indirect, or close contact with infected people through secretions such as saliva, respiratory secretions, or through droplets which are expelled when an infected person coughs, sneezes, talks, or sings. But in their most latest information, which is as late as 30th April, they have changed this and have informed that the virus can also spread in poorly ventilated and or crowded indoor settings where people tend to spend longer periods of time. This is because aerosol remains suspended in the air or travel further than 1 meter, which is a long range. Now, this is a very, very important change from the apex authority in the world. What it therefore says is, if you have a COVID patient in a room and then the patient has left, or sorry, the individual has left, and you can enter into this room for X amount of hours, say 3 hours, within that room, you are still at a chance of getting that infection. So it is no longer being close contact. That is, of course, one mode of transmission, but airborne transmission is also important. And where does this data come from? Is from this, that long-range transmission of this virus and the disease has been seen in people who have attended concerts, in cruise ships, in care homes, in correctional facilities, and dare I say even the IPL, as we have recently seen. Long-range transmission between people, even in adjacent rooms, not sharing the same room, like in hotel rooms, in quarantine hotels, where hotels have not now turned into hospitals, where people have been quarantined in one room, then others who have been in adjoining room, not necessarily the room next door, but even a few rooms away, have caught this viruses. So how does then, they have never come into contact with individuals. How does it spread? Clearly through airborne. Asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic transmission. In other words, asymptomatic is you get the virus, but you do not have any symptoms. Pre-symptomatic is the stage where you get the virus and then you're asymptomatic at that particular time, but within the next 4 or 5 days, you get the symptoms. It is believed that this is as high as 33 to 59%. And therefore, this transmission also tells us that if people have not had symptoms and have been away from individuals who have been infected, how is it that they are getting this? Clearly, it is airborne. Transmission is higher indoors than outdoors. I've explained that also. The virus has been detected in the air in laboratory experiments. So if the individual of COVID has gone away again, their air is sampled, you can detect this viable CoV-2 viruses, and therefore it enhances the impression that it is an airborne disease. And finally, the virus has been identified in air filters and building ducts of hospitals, etc. Now, this is place they can only reach through really airborne transmission in hospitals. They can, and these are therefore the evidence which tells you that the virus can be airborne apart from the droplet and the fomite transmission. Let's come to the third myth. And this is very important because this is something which I feel very strongly, and this is what you people also have felt, that there is such a great demand from individuals, from people, that have, I've got my scan done. Most of the times I receive patients either from far off or through teleconsultation, that immediately at one minute, I've got my COVID test done, I've got COVID positive, and my scan is showing a score of this and that. And at the same breath, they talk about, doing a CT scan. So the myth is HRCT is mandatory. It is a must to get a CT scan of your lungs. And the myth is it helps diagnosis. The myth is it helps management. And the myth is it tells you the outcome. Nothing can be far from the truth. But how was this myth generated? From original papers coming from China, where they said that the CT scan is helpful to radiologists for an early detection and diagnosis. And this was way back in March 2020, when the virus was the disease was in preliminary stages. And studies coming from Europe, especially from Italy, which then scored your scans by saying that potential role of the score in predicting how severe you have the disease, highly correlated with lab findings and disease severity, and it may be beneficial to speed up diagnostic workflow in symptomatic cases. Over this 1 year, we have realized that a scan has unable to fulfill all the expectations. There is no point doing a CT scan in a patient who is COVID positive as diagnosed by the RT-PCR. The RT-PCR test has its limitations. Only 70% of the times an RT-PCR can be positive, and we can say that 30% of the time it is negative. So by all means, insist on a scan if you have the symptoms and if you are RT-PCR negative, but please do not sort of circumvent the gold standard, which remains the RT-PCR test, and start insisting on a CT scan if you are well, because it neither helps me as your treating doctor to change your treatment. It neither tells me how severe it is, because I shall give you two scan reports from patients of mine. On your left is a report which says 80 to 85% of the total lung area, in case my radiologist told me he has got severe disease. This patient was not on oxygen. He did not need oxygen. He was well except for a cough. And therefore, in spite of this severity, all I had to do was manage this individual at home with a continuous interaction, saying that, though he was in a panic state when he looked at 80 to 85%. So the severity the scan does not tell you the severity. It is the oxygenation which tells you the severity. And on the right is another patient whose severity score was 5 out of 25. Which you all might have been known by this time, because you all have become experts also at this 25 and 85%. This patient within 24 hours snowballed into an ICU situation and was ventilated. So this neither makes me sort of, complacent, because I would have said otherwise at 5 out of 25, it's a mild disease, nothing will happen to you. And within 24 hours, he immediately progressed and worsened. So this doesn't tell you, a scan does not help you to tell you whether the patient, how bad a patient is. The correlations are weak, as I've just shown it to you. 20 out of 25 does not necessarily mean that you are in a very severe state. And a 5 out of 25 does not tell you that you have got a mild disease. Patterns are more important rather than extent. And that pattern is something which has not been standardized, and therefore the radiologist will not report. Falsely positive scans are seen in 10 to 30%. In other words, radiologists might get this wrong in as high as 30%. They will tell you, "Arey, aapka scan to COVID hi hai, aapna scan COVID." But it has turned out in 10 to 30% of the cases that this has been another diagnosis, such as another type of pneumonia caused by bacteria or other diseases, not necessarily COVID, and therefore it sends the alarm bells to people. Understandably so, in a pandemic where if you're told if you have COVID, you panic. It is false negative in up to 30%. Now see, this is important. In other words, your scan may be normal and you can still have COVID. Your scan will have certain patches which will tell you that it is not COVID, and still it could be COVID. So it both ways, this CT scan has its limitation. And of course, this contention issue, which you have read in the newspapers, where a senior colleague of ours, and I agree with it, that one CT scan is equal to 300 to 400 X-rays. Now, of course, the pattern of CT scan has changed. People are using low dose radiation, but still it doesn't mitigate the fact that you are exposed to radiation. And individuals have insisted, like there was just 2 days back, where a jeweler family, a very rich family, was pressurizing me to get their mother's scan done every 4th day. She's a 68-year-old lady. She's already had 3 scans done before. And he kept telling me, can you do one more scan? Can you do me one more scan? So what I'm saying is there is a continuous sort of, collective sort of way, by way of which both from the health community and from our individuals who have really messed up this CT scan issue. There is always a transmission risk when you send your patient to a CT scan with the health individuals. And let's not forget the cost. Though many state governments have reduced the cost, still it is about 3,000 rupees, and it's come down now to 1,500 rupees. But nonetheless, it is an expensive affair. It does not help me to change the management, and it does not help me to change or predict the outcomes. So this is the fact of the myth of HRCT is mandatory. A very apex body of chest imaging and interventions have given a clear indication when you should do it. But more important, let me bring this out to when it is not indicated. When you come to a diagnosis, remember, cough is not an indication. If you have cough and COVID, that does not mean you have CT scan. Look at what they say. Not indicated if patients or relatives are wanting or demanding a CT scan to check the status of lungs. No, your answer as a doctor, my answer as a doctor would be, look, your oxygen and your condition will help me to tell you how good or bad your lungs is, not pretty pictures. And when you explain this, a lot of people do agree to the fact that, look, we will mitigate or circumvent scan. Does it help in the management? Routine evaluation as part of a routine protocol. It is not indicated. There is nothing like routine. A routine scan. Patients or relatives wanting regular check CT scan is really not an indication for getting scans. And finally, a follow-up is also not needed. We do scans only when the condition worsens or we are thinking of something else. Let's look at the fourth or the penultimate sort of myth, which is the medicine myth in COVID-19 diseases. And I talk about specifically 2 because most of the others really have over time been shown to have no use. But the medicine myth is medicines work in COVID. The sad part of the story is that probably it is only one medicine as of now, which is the steroids, which work. Most of the medicines were poorly studied. They are very irrelevant endpoints, which doesn't mean anything to an individual like, and most of them are ineffective. Let's talk about remdesivir, which has created such a hula in the whole country. Every day we talk about, people caught holding remdesivir. A truck carrying, a consignment of remdesivir crashes and people looting those vaccines. And there are these sort of bizarre stories about this particular medication. Remember, it's not a magic. And the myth is it's a magic curative drug, which it is not. It can be used across the spectrum of illness, whether it be mild or whether it be severe. And what you see is you land up in patients because having no problem, only a minor cough, I know have been given remdesivir. It reduces, the myth is it reduces severity, it prevents progression, and it improves mortality. Again, there's nothing which is far from the truth. And how did this remdesivir trial? Again, I'll make it very simple and avoid a lot of statistics and medical jargon. But this was the Sentinel paper in November 2020, a final report based on 1,600 or 1,600 patients, which showed that they gave 50% of the people a placebo, in other words, not the medicine. Another 50%, they gave this drug remdesivir as an injection. And they found that the time to recovery in patients who were given remdesivir was less by 5 days. In other words, they recovered in 10 days, whereas those who were not given this medication were recovered in 15 days. The second was the 29-day mortality. At the end of 29 days, people who were given remdesivir, 11.4% people sort of died, whereas 15.2% in the placebo died. But this difference was not significant. And therefore, the conclusion was remdesivir was superior to a placebo in shortening the time of recovery, but in whom? In adults who were hospitalized, not in an inpatient, not in the house, with COVID-19 and had evidence of low respiratory tract infection. Here, we have been seeing people with minor cold and body ache and malaise and a fever, remdesivir they do. Or patients who have just very minimal disease, whose oxygenation fine, give remdesivir. This is what has happened with the myth that remdesivir. Now, WHO Solidarity trial. This was an amazing trial, really taking care of almost 20,000 patients across, I think, 12,000 patients, I beg your pardon, in 500 hospital sites in over 30 countries. what do we see in these, that all the 4 drugs which we have used, I'm sorry, I don't know how this red line has come, remdesivir, hydroxychloroquine, 2 antiviral combination and interferon was supposed to, before that, reduce mortality, reduce the need for ventilation and duration of hospitalization. They investigated each medicine like this with that, and they found that really this did not at all cause reduction in deaths, reduction in need for ventilation, and neither did it reduce the duration of hospitalization. And therefore, what WHO said was these drugs appear to have little or no effect on hospitalized COVID-19 patients. The Therapeutics and COVID-19 guideline from WHO mentioned, we suggest against administering remdesivir in addition to usual care. This is their new guidelines with the WHO. Forget the moderate or severe or mild cases. They have across the board said that they are not advocating using this drug. What our Indian guidelines, which is the AIMS and the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare guidelines says, and it does say that remdesivir can be considered only in patients who have moderate to severe disease needing high oxygen. Other things are there, no kidney or liver functions, and who are within the 10 days of symptoms, early stages. And this is, remember, an off-label use, and it has to be on a case-to-case basis. What we've been seeing is a massive rollout of remdesivir in most private public hospitals, as a result of which this shortage is really man-made. We unfortunately don't look at science, we don't respect science, and we choose to ignore this and create these myths and create these shortages. Remdesivir, the facts are, it is not to be given in mild cases, and if given, it is very early in the disease, within almost 5 or 7 days rather than the last stage. The plasma myth really is plasma will help. Why? Because plasma has got neutralizing antibodies. So if a patient has COVID and you take the plasma, they'll be rich in the antibodies which are generated because of his virus. And if you give this virus to other patients, those antibodies will neutralize the virus in these new patients, and thereby it will reduce the course of the disease, it will prevent the progression of the disease, and it might also reduce mortality. Again, whether it works has been from previous history, where we know passive immunotherapy has been used since late 19th century. In fact, the first Nobel Prize in Physiology of Medicine was awarded to Emil Adolf van Behring for his serum therapy for patients with diphtheria. The 1918, we know, the Spanish flu pandemic, serum from convalescent patients were used to treat influenza. And we know that immunoglobulins, prophylaxis, and treatment for a large number of infections seem to work, like hepatitis and etc., which is there. So the premise is very strong that if you give people antibody-rich plasma, then it will help that. But the initial randomized control trials showed weak evidence. They were underpowered with very limited enrollment of patients, and you had a heterogeneous group. We did not know how much antibody content was in the serum when we gave patients, and we didn't know the recipient state, at what did he have minor COVID, severe disease, etc. However, it is safe, and therefore it caught up the imagination of people. But the National Institute of Health in USA said way back the data is insufficient to recommend for or against. The Infectious Disease Society of America says limited to clinical trials, critically ill patients, ICU patients are unlikely to benefit, used as, and if used as early as possible. And our Indian Council of Medical Research, based on the Placid trial, which was which is an open label trial, it randomizedly controlled patients, 39 public and private hospitals across India. It said there was not associated with a reduction in progression to severe COVID-19 or all-cause mortality. So therefore, why is it still being used extensively? I'm guilty to that. Today, I have given a patient of COVID. To be frank, my friends, the need to do something and not be helpless. You have nothing to offer to the patients, especially in the second wave. And believe me, it's heart-wrenching to see young individuals, which I would agree with Father Xavier, that it is the second wave which has caused young individuals to just wring your hands at the bedside saying, I can't offer you anything, and the need to do something. And therefore, convalescent plasma is one of a safe sort of interventions. And the dilemma always lives, what if it worked, if it has worked? And then you are, you sort of gain inspiration or confidence by the fact that a couple of patients, it did help. So let's try it out in this patient. It has some fringe benefits like time to relief of symptoms. Virus can turn negative quickly. Scientific faith, as I said, we still use it extensively because we do not have faith in science, and we believe that between pragmatism and between science, let's be pragmatic and give people something if we cannot offer anything. It is safe, it is easily available and cheap, and the urge to help. So optimal timing is important. Optimal timing for donating plasma is important, and the severity of class of patients who are likely to benefit remains still unclear. Let's go to the fifth myth, which we all ask. Will this pandemic end? We have the vaccine. We know all about herd immunity, and we know our history that most pandemics have settled. So will this pandemic will also end? I'm going to only leave you all to answer with just 3 slides. And you can answer only this. The fact is, will it? We have a smarter enemy now. The second wave has shown that the virus changes. It changes, it mutates. And we know that there are the various mutations in India, the B117 of UK, which is mainly seen in North India like Punjab and Delhi, the South African, which is mainly seen in few areas in Maharashtra, the Brazil one, but the double mutant, which is catching up, is mainly seen in Andhra Pradesh and in some places in Maharashtra, the B1.36 variant and the B1617 variant. 42% of the samples in Andhra Pradesh really are showing this B1.36 variant. And in Punjab, as I said, it's B117. In Maharashtra, it's the B167. This mutation can escape the immune system. And therefore, the worry is really, our vaccines which are given are going to protect us. How do we explain this new wave? Many patients already have seroconverted. Up until October or November, almost 30% of the seroconversion in the Indian population was seen. How is it that they are then getting this COVID-19? Why is it that when we are giving vaccines, still people are getting it? And why are we seeing this huge surge? So are these variants more transmissible? Science tells us it is not the case. Is it more lethal? I think it is. Does it protect the current vaccination, and is it responsible for reinfections? And this is a very important quote, which I leave for you to ponder upon, from the Institute of Mathematical Sciences, Professor Gautam Menon. The SARS-CoV-2 virus is doing exactly what viruses do. Nothing more and nothing less. There is no malevolence on its part, no special animosity towards human beings. The change in its sequence reflects the process of evolution, ultimately responsible for the diversity of life on this planet. Will we mutate when we are threatened? The virus will mutate when it is threatened. And therefore, this is absolutely important that this is happening, and this will happen over the next few months and years. And we have to be really prepared for that. So we know that we have a smarter enemy, and it has a friendly target. Name any state. These huge conglomerations foolishly allowed by our people and allowed by people's behavior is not making it easy for us to really control this pandemic. So I'm not sure whether this pandemic will end, especially in our country, so soon. Or for that matter, the shortages of weapons we have to fight this, the lack of infrastructure, the lack of materials. You can see oxygen problems which we are facing. Or for that matter, exhausted, the pandemic exhaustion which our health workers are going through. Or for that matter, even not helped by a governance which, instead of setting examples, is engaged in mixed up priorities and bravado. So, all this is somehow conspiring to leave us with this dismal answer that the pandemic may not end as easily as we think, at least in our country. And in such dismal times, really, what I do is I resort to this saying, which in both ways is very inspiring and also very scary. And this was what the Pope, in his sort of extraordinary blessings to the city and the world, in an empty St. Peter's Square in Vatican on March 27 said, Lord, and I mumble this prayer, believe me, every morning, Lord, may you bless the world, give health to our bodies and comfort our health. You ask us not to be afraid, yet our faith is weak and we are fearful. But you, Lord, will not leave us at the mercy of the storm. Tell us again, do not be afraid. Thank you once again to the Alumni Association, Father Xavier, Vikas, my friends, and all my dear colleagues for this wonderful opportunity. I hope my critics, who are my best buddies, will tear me apart or bless me for doing the work which I'm doing. I also add in the fact that I've looked at the Alumni Association website, and thank you, Father Xavier, and all our Alumni Association for doing this excellent work all over the country. And this latest initiative of offering some of your premises will, I'm sure, help us and help all to go a great way in trying to mitigate this pandemic disaster. Friends, I don't need to emphasize, we are in difficult times, and this is coming from a frontline worker who day in and day out over the 9 months have seen that especially the second wave is extremely heart-wrenching. All I can say is protect yourself, go for the vaccines, and really spread that we need to use our common sense and protect ourselves and our loved ones. Thank you once again.
Thank
Happy
you,
to
Doctor.
answer questions and with whatever little bit of knowledge I have. I'll stop sharing the screen.
So, Doctor, due to the short availability of oxygen, what is your suggestion that if the oximeter is showing below 95 or between 95 and 90, what should be the first thing which the patient's family should do or the caregiver should do, waiting for the oxygen or any other thing? So what is the sequence by which the treatment should be advised by the caregiver?
Okay, that's great. The immediate thing is, the immediate as in always cases, don't panic, right? We've learned over the time that 90 to 95% oxygen is a care of concern, but it is not a catastrophe. We have seen individuals in this COVID knowing what we call as happy hypoxemia. In other words, they will be well, the oxygen will be low. So first is don't panic, switch yourself and sleep on your stomach. This is called awake proning. Supine is sleeping straight on your back, prone is sleeping on your stomach. My advice, if I get it on the phone, would be A, don't panic. B, turn yourself and sleep on your stomach. You'll be pleased to know that your oxygen might improve. Third, get in touch with your health personnel, just forewarning him that this is what has happened and what should I do. The advice, depending upon a clinical condition, either on the phone or through telemedicine, and on what medicines they are, will be given, and will be told that while you wait for this, keep on your prone and take the medicines which you're taking, and just watch and this over the next, say, few hours. And I assure you that it's not going to be a catastrophic disaster if you just do this and wait for help to come through.
Doctor, the people are importing the concentrator in large numbers, and people are also keeping it at their home as a safeguard. What is your advice regarding the use of oxygen concentrator, which is now everybody is vying for in absence of cylinders?
Well, first of all, if you're comparing cylinders and a concentrator, clearly concentrators are better than oxygen cylinders for a number of reasons. We don't need to go to that. But my objection is towards hoarding of any kind. Look, we can't put ourselves first before the community, the society in large. In our alumni group, St. Xavier's alumni group, I was miffed to hear a quote, somebody saying that, can you please advise me which concentrator to buy? Our building wants to buy a concentrator. These sort of things. I mean, you can't just keep things in reserve when the whole, the mankind is suffering from lack of oxygen. You can't hoard this. And therefore, I would strongly urge you that this is not the right way of trying to import oxygen concentrators and keeping yourself. Look, we know 80% of the people with COVID improve, right? Without oxygen, they improve. It's the 10 or 15% who over the times we have identified who are going to worsen. Yes, the second wave of the 2 months have upset all our calculations, but we can still predict the ones who are going to worsen and who need oxygen. So my sincerest request to these people is there is no point hoarding. Do not go in for concentrators. If you are in a situation like a society which is a philanthropic society which are going to help people, by all means, our Society of Respiratory Medicine in Vadodara have purchased concentrators, and we are letting it out to people who, when it is needed, when physicians call us up. So if this is the aim behind it, then by all means go for it, but not for your individual or for a building self or for a family self. No.
Dharmen, you have some question? Dharmen or Darshita?
Yes, I have a question. Good evening, doctor. Thank you so much for such an informative session. I want to know that can a person who has recovered from COVID be infected? And if yes, how soon can he be infected?
Thanks. Great question. Still, mulling over that over quite a few months' time, because patients have come up like this, having positive and then coming back. My feeling is they are being sort of reinfected. That's for sure. And this reinfection is probably a mutant variant which is causing this. It is different from the variant which they had. The protective antibodies against that is probably not working against a fresh infection, which they are catching up. And I think it's the mutant one. Sadly, we are not doing genomic testing in a large number of population. I'm sure if we send this persons for virus for genomic testing, you will find a different variant. So the short answer is yes, people are getting infected in spite of having got COVID in the few months back. Now, what is the period? I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to that. It could be ranged from any time. For example, there was one patient who was day before yesterday, a 42-year-old gentleman who had one in December. His father got tested positive. So he said, let me also get myself tested positive. And he's asymptomatic, but his RT-PCR has come back positive after turning negative in January. So December to March, 3 months, he's tested positive, negative, positive. But I can't tell you the time frame from after when the first infection would he be vulnerable to catching a second infection.
So they have to take all the precautions like any of us. That's what you're saying?
Which is what I'm saying. The second wave has upset our calculations. We felt, including me, who I got COVID, that look, I'm reasonably well protected. And the last 2 months have just, made a mockery of science, to be frank. So we have to continue our aura. The vaccine also, we don't even know how long the antibodies are going to last. We take the vaccine, we don't even know whether 80 days, 90 days, 6 months, all this is slowly coming out. But we know the antibodies, that titer wave sort of go down with time. So what we would have taken, and therefore the question is coming of, do we need booster doses of vaccine now? And there is some talk in the West that they will probably provide booster vaccinations, especially in UK, to people after a certain period of time. So at no stage, I think we can let our guard down just because we've got COVID or just because we've got vaccination.
Okay, thank you so much.
Manoj, unmute yourself, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are many questions. 1 or 2 questions with your permission, Doctor, we can take.
By all means, I'm yours.
Naresh.
Yeah. Good evening, doctor. I have a query. Now people have taken Covishield twice, and this new Sputnik is coming, which is said to be 95%. If more efficient. One is 95% efficient. The Indian ones are 70 or 80% efficient. So after taking this Covaxin or Covishield, after a few days time or after a month time, can he again take back the Sputnik?
I don't know whether, it is going to enhance that just on this data that you've taken 2 vaccines of, say, Covishield, and you are, say, roughly about 70 or 75% protected. Yeah. So now you want to take the Sputnik to try and increase your protectiveness to maybe another 20%. And therefore, you want to take a 3rd dose of vaccine. I am not sure that's going to be a great strategy to do that, because I don't think, remember that they're also, they use a different platform. The Sputnik uses a different platform.
Okay, sir. Again, I'm asking one more thing. If somebody is not taking any
Covishield platform, so how is it going to interact in somebody? Sorry, hello, I've lost you. Hello.
Yeah, we can listen to you.
Yes, if nobody has taken the vaccine.
Yeah. Hello. If somebody is not taking any vaccine, can he go for Sputnik now because that is more efficient? What is your suggestion?
Well, efficiency, yes, but you have to look at the literature well in this thing. First of all, you obviously are at the moment, you don't have too much of a choice, right? None of us have too much of a choice. It's a government-run program. In Gujarat, we are all getting Covishield. If I want, the other alternative, I won't be offered that. Let's say that the market opens up, which it will, and you have a choice of going into a pharmacy and saying, look, I want Sputnik, or I want, you know, the Pfizer one, then you look at the data very clearly. And the data you have to see is, one is the efficiency, yes. Second is whether you need 2 vaccines, whether you need 1 vaccine, right? And whether this will need booster later on, etc. So this information will be in the public domain. It is in the public domain. I would suggest at the moment that there is not great difference between, you know, any of these vaccines such dramatically for you to choose which is there, because the Pfizer one, which is in the United States, has more than 95%. But then there is some talk about it needing also a 3rd vaccine dose for that. So there are these issues. Would you like to have 3 vaccines? Would you like to have 1 vaccine? All this needs to be taken into account. I would suggest is, you know, at the moment, it's between Covishield and Covax. And when Sputnik comes, yes, it is 95% important. But if you have a choice, if you don't have a choice, then it's a different. If you have a choice, maybe you could think about that after looking at the literature well. I have looked at it. I can't see a great difference between the Covishield and the Sputnik.
Thank you so much.
And remember, Naresh, my friend, that, you know, this we are talking about people like, look, this is must have done in the Russian country, right? Just like, you know, the Pfizer studies must have done. How each individual from different geographical parts of the world react. This antibody business is very tricky, really. You know, in many parts of the country, our antibodies, we have a soup of antibodies in our blood. How will the Indian population react to a vaccine manufactured in a different country? Whether our mutants, which are the double mutant, will that Sputnik cover up the double mutant? We don't have all this information.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Saab. Dr. Saab, I have 2 questions actually. Can you explain in simple terms what double mutant mean? And number 2, you know, there has been media reports on 3rd wave. What is your opinion? I mean, is it going to be much worse?
So the second question, my opinion is the 3rd wave is inevitable. It is inevitable. It is going to come. It is inevitable. And I'm not sure whether we should call these waves, just because there were 2 months of lull and there was no wave coming through. We thought that there was it's just a matter of calling this as first 2, 3 waves. It's the virus has always been there. And the change in our public behavior and etc. has called this as a wave. So I'm not sure it is a 3rd wave, but this 2nd wave will only continue. Whether you call it 3rd wave, call it whatever wave, the 3rd wave is inevitable. Answering your first question is what, in simple terms, a double mutant is. As I told you, that everybody who is threatened will change. You know, we will change, every animal changes, the virus changes. So when it is threatened to annihilation, it will change a little bit of its, you know, DNA. And when you have this DNA analyzed, then there are, as you know, your genetic material has got various sort of, you know, groups of genetic material. So a mutation which is seen in 2 different areas of the genetic material, which is labeled as, I think, the E403 or something. So there have been changes in these 2 parts of the virus's genetics framework, and therefore it mutates in these 2 parts, thereby changing its complexion a bit and sometimes making it immune escape. So in short, I suppose would like my, you know, I say develop a more, to give a very poor analogy, is I develop a thick skin as a part of evolution, because I live in a place where it's very hot. So I evolve and my skin evolves. This is through a mutation. Why? Because it is self-preservation. And similarly, if I develop a little bit of more air, you know, hair in my nose, so as to filter the heat wave coming into my nose, living in a hot place, then these are the 2 modifications I've gone through evolution so as to protect myself. So similarly, the virus in its genetic material changes in 2 or different places, which is therefore a double mutant. There can be a triple mutant coming up or a single mutant where there is a change in only 1 section of its genetic material. So double mutant in simple terms means the genetic material of the viruses has undergone changes in 2 different parts of its genetic setup.
Dhruda?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor. Now, I have one question that we are having a dreadful 2nd wave. Now, this morning only I was hearing in some news channel that the doctors are envisaging another 3rd wave. So this is really daunting. Now, how do we get along with this? Are there any self-protection apart from mask and hand washing and social distancing. We often hear that steam inhalation every day once is good. Then two is that if one takes zinc tablet or some vitamin tablets, that is helpful. I don't know. But can there be some precautions apart from these social SMS, what you said? What are the other things where we are at a loss? We are helpless.
Drupada, as lost as you are coming from an health worker, this is not a very encouraging answer. But, you know, search me. I do not have the answers except vaccine as of now. Really, steam inhalation, in fact, is actually not advocated because, again, it's an aerosol generating procedure. If you have an asymptomatic COVID, like you are asymptomatic, but you could still harbor the virus. When you take steam inhalation, these are aerosol generating procedures. So really, a lot of places and a lot of hospitals are actually advocating steam inhalation, gargling, etc., which actually should not be encouraged, number one. Number two, sadly, zinc, vitamin C, calcium, this is all the, you know, masala which we've been dishing out to patients. If you ask me at the bottom of the heart, this is not doing anything. Again, this is the urge to do something. We can say that all this bolsters up your immune system and therefore you are more stronger to fight the virus. Where is the science that zinc and all really increases the immune system? It is not that. What should therefore I do? I think continue your mask wearing, which is there, but I would urge you to rapidly vaccinate yourself and others, because as of now I see that only as a salvation. Irrespective of whatever, it has protection. You may be infected, you may be diseased, but I tell you, the vaccine, we've seen this, all health personnel who have been vaccinated, Drupada, at this stage, this second wave, we are not seeing so many doctors falling sick. We're not seeing that. First wave was terrible. We lost a lot of our colleagues. Second wave, we are not seeing this. That, we are therefore, why? Because we were the first ones to be vaccinated. And those who are having that are mild diseases. So vaccination will not prevent you from catching COVID, but certainly it will prevent you from getting the severe form or hospitalization, or almost sure it will probably protect you not towards, not to living through this and not dying. Of course, if stupidly your, medical system doesn't botch up things, which they are at the moment, through lack of oxygen, through lack of medicines, through lack of beds, and through lack of, many other things on the part of our health, system as well.
Last two questions, Pawan and Ashwin, I think. Just very short questions. Please let us allow to round up. Yeah.
Good evening, doctor. Sir, a question like any data or information regarding the vaccination for age below 18? Is there any experiment going on this?
Yes, it is very much. I think it will be another 2 or 3 months where we'll get the data out. It's being already checked out in children and in teenagers. I think 3 months is what we probably have. Even earlier on, we get the data, just as we've got it for pregnancy, which is safe.
Okay. So Ashwin, you have the last question, then we close this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doctor. It was an incredible session, and there's a lot of thoughts which have come into us. I just have a very quick one. If there is a patient who's got COVID and the symptoms have lasted for about 2 or 3 days, like in temperatures ranging between 99 and 100, 101 at the most, and has been going through regular medication for only the paracetamol, like Meftal or something of that sort. How long, and after that the temperature has come down, and now she's on the both of them are on the 7th or 8th day, which they say is between the 7th and the 10th day is the most critical time. I just want a very quick one. After that person finishes the 10th day and the temperature is normal for 3 days, with including continuation of the paracetamol, is it the right time to get out of the bio bubble, or does the person needs to still stay in there? Thank you.
Great. Okay, so he has to stay there in the bio bubble, of course, which is there because fever is a marker of 2 things. It could be an acute viremia stage, or it could be the hyperimmune response from the body, both of which will produce fever. I'm not anticipating a secondary bacterial infection at this early stage, but I just have to now differentiate. Is it the virus which is causing the fever, or is it the body's host system which is reacting and causing the fever? What will help me to do that is, number one, is just a few basic tests like the blood test, which you all all aware of is the CRP and the CBC and things like that, ferritin, etc. I would probably switch over, which I've been doing with reasonable effect, of giving people things like, combiflam or ibugesic type of medications, because they act as antipyretic and act as anti-inflammatory and have got good results with that. But this is also the time where we start considering corticosteroids really in patients to enhance and bring down the symptom relief, and which has also worked by giving them small courses of steroids. It need not be intravenous preparation, but it could be oral preparations, which if the fever continues for around 6th, 7th day or 8th day, high grade fever especially, in spite of him being normal, this is the time where we could use corticosteroids, because this is where the virus is on its way out from the body, and it's the body's hyperimmune system which is causing this fever to happen. So you want to bring down the hyperimmune response, for which corticosteroids are helpful.
Thank you, Doctor. Vikas, you can take over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Patel. It was very, very informative.
Vikas?
Yes, Father.
I just want to say a few words about to Doctor. Doctor, thank you very much. Usually I don't come in before giving vote of thanks. I would like to tell you it was a very, very scholarly presentation. You did not hide any facts. You have been very frank. At the end, I am very much satisfied. Most of our doubts are clear and we are very happy. In fact, I was telling to Father Joseph, who is the Vice Principal of Commerce, that it should have been open to all our staff and students. It was such a wonderful talk. Our students and our staff members would have been very, very happy to listen to you. And through that,
it will be on the record. It will be on the record on FB.
Yeah, you have proved that
everybody
you are
can
Xaverian.
Yeah.
It was beautiful to listen to you. It was very informative. Most of my doubts have been cleared. Thank you very much. Please continue your, the great work that you are doing. We are with you. On behalf of all the fathers of St. Xavier's, our prayerful support will be always with you. May God bless you. Thank you very much.
Xavier, that means a lot to me coming from you and from all my school colleagues. I can't be more grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
There are no words now.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, there are no words. You have done a wonderful, this is the first time, Father, in the 15th series that you have come in. And
exactly. Otherwise, I don't come in. Yeah, I know.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Patel, for taking your time. I know you have been, I've been trying to chase you, and I know how busy you've been. It's so kind of you that you could clear our doubts. And Father, thank you very much for pushing us for this entire series. The 15th series is totally your blessings and your support why we are carrying on with this series of talks. And thank you very much. Thank you, Sanjeev. For some reason today, Sanjeev's connectivity is not available. Otherwise, our Honorary Secretary, Sanjeev Konar, he has been also pushing this entire series, and it would have been, he was supposed to give the vote of thanks, but unfortunately, because of his connection, he's not able to do it. Thank you, Manoj Mani Agarwal, for this wonderful connectivity and the entire things put up on Facebook. Thank you, each and every member of our association, for the support that you're giving us, and may we continue, and God bless you, and we hope that everyone stays safe and well. Thank you once again.
May God bless you. Thank you,
Just
Doctor.
one request. Just one request. Everyone should share this video recording of FB on their page so that more and more people can benefit from this deliberation.
Sure.
From the recording.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Dharmesh. Nice meeting you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Father, your permission, can I close the session?
Please, correct.
Thank you. Thank you.